Crazy. So welcome to you all.
Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone. Hello. Yeah, let's start with a little motivation, and then we'll generate that mind of refuge. So think about why you're here, why you've decided to take some time to join this session, and related to your own aims and aspirations, both the short term and also the longest term and the highest aspirations for yourself, and then also connected to your aspirations for others, your family and friends, neighbors, strangers, and all humans and animals and all the other sentient beings in the world. Hopefully we can aspire to do something to benefit all of them, free all of them from suffering. And may this, whatever we do in this session, may this contribute to that. So whatever your aspiration is, your motivation, focus on that for a few moments. And then bring to mind your object of refuge, whether it's the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or something else. Then bring that to mind and generate the mind of faith, going to refuge, going for refuge. And then finally make a request from your heart for blessings and inspiration to grow and benefit, to deepen your understanding, deepen your practice somehow by what we do together in this session. Okay. So, what is the topic? The nature of reality. No. Yeah, I mean, most of you probably know in Buddhism, that means emptiness, selflessness, shunyata, the ultimate nature of reality. So that's also what I have in mind. Are there any questions right off the bat? Right at the outset, if you have any questions, I can answer. Otherwise, I'll go on. I can try to answer. Yes, Madhav.
Good evening, Venerable Legstok. I had a question regarding, the view when we're meditating, right? Like how, I know, I've done meditations with you, how we, ultimate negation, right, is emptiness. We keep negating, right? But are we, I mean, obviously things exist in some relative truth and ultimate truth, right?
Good.
So
it's important to keep that in mind, yes, because some people
correct.
go too far and throw that out too. Don't want to do that.
So, I mean, so it's a fine line between nihilism and eternalism, correct? We have to be in that middle.
Yeah, that's the middle way, exactly. Yeah.
Correct. So my question is this, right? When we're in meditation, are we trying to transcend this mind of self-grasping ignorance and the mind of let's put it, the self-cherishing mind? Are we trying to transcend this to the ultimate, the like Buddha mind, or is that our goal?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing?
I couldn't have said it better.
Am I right?
Exactly right. We're trying to transcend ignorance, the self-grasping mind, which is ignorance, and we're trying to transcend self-cherishing, which we have because we grasp at a self that doesn't exist, and we cherish that false self. And we think that one's more important than everybody else in the world. So it's okay to do things as long as they help me, even if it harms others, because others don't matter. Right? So yeah, we're trying to transcend that and achieve the Buddha mind, which is wisdom, right? Which recognizes that actually when I look for this self the way it ordinarily appears, I can't find it. I realize it's an illusion. What I do find is a whole infinite. Well, what do we find when we look for ourself? We find all kinds of different things, a whole set of like all kinds of phenomena, cells, blood, bones, you know, ears, eyes, noses, which none of which are ourself. We find memories, which are not ourself, plans and hopes and aspirations for the future, which are also not ourself. Feelings, you know, feeling happy, feeling sad, feeling confused, feeling elated, feeling victorious, which are also not ourself, and all kinds of thoughts. So, what is self? Yeah, so we want to transcend this idea that there's this real, concrete, inherently existent self. And yeah, so we have to try to, you know, we're working towards understanding what is a Buddha's perception of reality, which means what is reality, right? Because to be enlightened means you're awakened to what? You're awakened to the truth, to how things actually exist. And not just sometimes, like all the time. And you're totally, you know, have totally eliminated any taint of grasping at something that's false. So yeah, we have to, so our understanding of what a Buddha's mind is goes hand in hand with our understanding of what reality is and deepening our experience of that, our continual awareness of that, and eliminating all kinds of false ideas that we're habituated to from beginningless time. But then, yeah, so, but then, so I was talking about self, well, you mentioned self-grasping, self-grasping, and from that self-cherishing, right? So Buddha is also infinitely kind, generous, compassionate, you know, so that's a very different quality than being wise, right? Just to be kind is something different than being wise. It's more emotional, it's more empathetic, it's more tender, and connecting with people is not so intellectual. So how is that related to being, well, because the more we know that, because the truth is that everything is interconnected, right? Everything's a dependently arising phenomena. So when we look for us, I think in the Hindu tradition, there's kind of a nice term. I don't know if I remember it though. Like a personal self. We look for a kind of personal self, a small self in a way. We don't find. That's what the Buddha. That's what the Buddha's trying to getting. But but uh, but what are we then? It's not like we don't exist. That's what you point out. You know, when we negate, it's not that we negate everything, because if we did that, then there's no negation, because there's no person that's negating anything. So there's definitely, we are there, like we exist. Stuff exists, there's no question. But then how does it exist? It's the question. Nothing exists independently on its own, from its own side, by and of its own power, totally separate and isolated and cut off from everything else. Everything exists as an interdependently, interrelated. Everything affects everything else and depends upon everything else. So, so then come back to ourselves. How do we exist? Yeah, we exist as this phenomena which is, you know, kind of mind-bogglingly interconnected with countless other phenomena, other people, the air, water, sun, the earth, you know, thoughts, conversations that happened, you know, thousands of years ago. You know, our ancestors, you know, from our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, and on and on and on and on back to, you know, early human beings, and then they're connected back to, you know, primates, on and back to the Big Bang. So we're infinitely connected, interconnected with everything else. So, uh, yeah. So there is no personal self, but it's like we're part of a greater, the cosmos is like our greater self in a way. But that's not something that's isolated as one person. So when we recognize that interdependence of everything and our dependence upon everything and our being interconnected, especially with other sentient beings, then naturally that gives rise to caring about them, right? Then we then we recognize when we harm others, we're actually harming ourselves. When we help others, we're helping ourselves because we're connected. We don't exist separately. So that's how the view is related to. Generally, His Holiness usually summarizes Tibetan Buddhism as being the view of dependent arising and the behavior of compassion. Right? How are they connected? Actually, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about today. So Madhav gave me a perfect entryway. Because partly because I saw, I look at YouTube now and then. I saw a YouTube video about this. The topic was, emptiness and compassion, and I was thoroughly disappointed by what there were two people who were speaking, and I thought they didn't hit the main point at all. They said they're interconnected. The more you develop compassion, the more you generate emptiness. Wisdom of emptiness. The more you understand emptiness, the deeper your compassion grows. And they said that, and that sounds nice, but why? They didn't say how they're connected. Why is it that when the deeper you meditate on emptiness, the more powerful your compassion should become, the more strong your compassion, the more you should generate wisdom realizing emptiness, or how they affect each other. So that's kind of the main point I wanted to make this session, and then maybe talk more about actually how to meditate on emptiness. But the main point is that what I just said, right? That it's because, well, why don't we start with the view of dependent arising? I mean, and dependent arising is the reason why everything is empty of inherent existence, right? So Buddhism usually say the ultimate view is that things are empty of an independent existence or inherent existence, which means they're empty of existing from their own side in isolation. So what does it mean for something to exist from its own side? It would mean like if you as a person, if we as people existed from our own side, it would mean like that the way we exist, how we are, what we do, what we've done in the past, what we'll do in the future, it doesn't depend upon other people at all. Let's look at that first. Like how we are is as it is, totally independently from anybody else. Now it doesn't depend upon our parents. So that then it would mean like the way like my body looks has nothing to do with the way my parents' bodies look, right? Because they're totally independent, separate from each other. It would mean the way I think, the way I speak, the way I behave has nothing to do with the way I was raised or the environment I grew up in, or any of my experiences, in friendships or, movie heroes or whatever. None of that would affect me in any way because I'm independent. I exist separately, unrelated to, unaffected by all those things. Right? That's what it means to be inherently existent or independently existent. It means something exists in isolation from, without connection with, without being affected by, without being related to anything else, totally separately. So, but we have it, but we do have some sense of this. Like, we do feel like generally, I mean, we have to check in our own experience, but so there's certain situations when it becomes more, it seems like that more strong, especially when we're very emoted. We're either upset someone or we feel defensive, like someone's accused us of doing something, or we feel suddenly afraid, like, we're almost in a car crash or something, we feel like we're going to die, then we grasp very strongly. It's almost like there's a clenching in our chest. There's a physical symptom, but but there's a mental perception that goes along, that somehow within kind of my heart, somehow within me, there's a real I, which does exist from its own side. It is it's like the core of what we are. It is as it is, and it just is like that, without depending upon anybody else, without depending upon my parents or my friends or any experiences in the past, or without depending upon my body or what I think about myself, the story by which I create kind of my own identity. Without being related to any of that stuff, there is this real I, which is just there. Right? So we have an innate sense of that, which is the outcome of habituation from countless past lives to grasping at this kind of I. So that's the main one, kind of negate in sort of rough terms when we analyze to find how we exist. And that's the one that gives rise to, so especially you can check, when you're angry, how do you appear to yourself? Is your sense of I stronger than when you're just kind of relaxed and enjoying things? Yeah, it's probably stronger. When you're greedy or jealous, especially when you're jealous, the I comes really strong. Why are they enjoying so much and I'm not? I. Or when you're really, attached to something and craving something, the stronger the craving is, the stronger the I is arising. Right. So that you can see then this grasping at this concrete, real, solidly existing I, it's very much related to afflictive emotions that disturb our mind: anger, jealousy, craving, lust, depression, you name it. So that's a big assertion Buddhists make that we need to check. That actually this kind of grasping at an independent, inherently existent self, it goes before and gives rise to and is correlated in strength with all of our different disturbing emotions, right? So is that true or not? We have to check. Okay, but back to, so I want to make this point before I stop, take more questions or stop, so how's that related to compassion? So, well, it's not too difficult to see then. Once we see we have this exaggerated sense of an independent I, a self like me, that the stronger that is, then the more of our attention and our energy it takes. It demands our attention. So then the more attention we give to just this sense of an I, which is cut off from everybody else, which is different from and exists in opposition from or in competition with everybody else, right? Then the less I care about other people, the more I care exclusively about myself, which is ego, right? That's the ego, which cares exclusively about me and doesn't care about anybody else, right? To put it in very simple terms. So then you can see the more we're exclusively concerned about ourselves and not concerned about others, the less compassion we have, right? The less we feel connected with others, the less we empathize with others, the less we stop to think about what's going on with others before we criticize them or make judgments about them, right? Because the more we're obsessively concerned with what's going on with ourselves, the less space we have in our mind and the less energy we have to perceive like what's going on with other people, to care about what's going on with other people. Not to mention to actually do something to help other people, right? So we're more cut off. In short, the more we're excessively concerned about ourselves, the more we're cut off from other people. And then we have all these mental projections, we make up all these stories about, well, I'm like this and they're like that. And without even knowing really what's going on with them, we project all these things. Well, they're like this because of this and that and that and that. Now we make up all this drama There's all these stories without stopping to actually, really try to imagine what it's like to be that other person in front of me. How are they feeling? What's going on with them? Um, so yeah, so then we don't have compassion. The more we have strong ego, self-centered attitude, the less compassion we have. And but then, so then let's skip to, okay, imagine we become very wise, right, all of a sudden, and we see that everything is empty of inherent existence. And actually everything is interconnected. And I'm like, this personal self, this individual I is like, it doesn't even exist. It's like nothing. Actually, I'm connected with everybody else. Then, and not only you see that, so of course, when you have that, you feel much more interconnected with other people, everybody else. You care much more about them, just naturally. So you're more compassionate. But not only that, it's like when you see, well, before I was so selfish and so self-centered, so small-minded, narrow-minded, and so judgmental thereby, and treated other people so badly because of all that. It created so much problems in my life, for me, for others. But all that was totally unnecessary, because all that was just arising out of a mistaken way of apprehending things, out of a mistaken perception of the way things exist. All that was just arising out of this stupid kind of ignorance that I didn't see for, countless lifetimes. But now I see that that was totally wrong. That was all just a big mistake. So then if you see that, well, if you see that that's why everybody suffers, but it's totally unnecessary, then naturally you have compassion for all. And you see that in order to help, I have to realize I have to meditate on emptiness and interdependence more and more and more. I have to totally eliminate this ridiculous grasping at, an inherently existent I, this independent I that exists independence inseparably from everybody else. So then because you see, not only, yeah, it's one thing to want, everybody to be free from suffering, but it's a whole nother thing to kind of have some sense of actually why they suffer, right? And to see that the root cause, the root reason they suffer is just a wrong way of perceiving things, of grasping at things. It's just a misapprehension of reality. It just comes from, it's an ignorant kind of wrong concept about how we exist, about how everything exists. So once you see that that's why everybody suffer, and it's not that hard to eliminate that, then you feel like, you can do something, right? You can do something very concrete to help other people by, so basically, if we can realize where our suffering comes from, and we see that there is a way to eliminate that, and that that's the same, what is the case for us is the same for everybody else, then you feel like not only, okay, you want to help others, but you can, by, if you can eliminate your own root of suffering and samsara, then you know how to do it, and you can teach that to everybody else. You can teach that to other people, right? So yeah. So that's another. So then, yeah, then it's like a much more engaged kind of compassion you can have. So then, when you meditate on emptiness, recognizing that you're interdependent with everybody else, naturally, it's something you're not just doing for yourself, you're also doing to benefit other people, right? And also, when you see people suffering, it's not just that okay, wish I could do something to help, but I can't. But that you're thinking about the other person's suffering leads you to remember dependent arising. Why are they suffering? Where is that coming from? Why is that going on? What are the causes that have led to that? Leads you to think about more deeply dependent arising, and remember emptiness, right? So then it is like when you meditate on compassion, it reminds you, yeah, I have to realize emptiness in order to eliminate the suffering of people. And when you meditate on emptiness, you remember, yeah, I'm this is freeing me from suffering. This is and this it's reminding me, on the one hand, I'm interdependent, interrelated with all sentient beings. But on the other hand, and this is why they're all suffering. So by doing this, I can do something to free all sentient beings from suffering. So there's two directions, that they're interrelated with each other. Okay. So well, I'm almost out of time, my half of the hour, but I wanted to show you these two verses before we stop. So these are two verses that His Holiness Dalai Lama usually recites, or what do you say, quotes, when he's talking about emptiness. So this is from the Root Wisdom, or what is it? Madhyamakam. I don't know. I don't remember the Sanskrit. Mulya something. Anyway, Root Wisdom by Nagarjuna from chapter 1, which is on the selflessness. Deepti, can you jump in? The Sanskrit. One more time.
Mula Madhyamika Karika.
Okay, thank you. Uh-oh, what happened to my PowerPoint slide? I did something to it. I think
went back.
I think so, yeah. Okay, so this is from chapter 1, which is on the selflessness of person and phenomena by Arya Nagarjuna. So the first, verse 80, a person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, and not all of them. What person is there other than these? So this is kind of like the analysis I just did a little bit with you all, just a little bit before. When we think about, so we go through, we think about, okay, what am I? First, actually, we get a sense of how we innately grasp at an independently existent I. Like when I said, when we're, feel jealous or feel upset or feel someone's falsely accused us something bad, then we have a strong sense of I. So we want to get a sense of that kind of I that, sorry, I don't know why it does that. Okay. And then look to see, well, how does that exist? Where is that person? So then he says, so then we analyze. This is just one way to analyze. A person is not earth. So we think about all the earth element of our body, right? Like the blood, well, the bones, the hard stuff. Not necessarily a hard, like a table is hard, but the solid material part, even down to the scale of atoms and subatomic particles. That which is, has resistance and weight. So, okay, so we're not earth. Think about the earth element of your body. Are you that? No, we're not that. So the person is not earth. Not water. Think about all the water element, right, in your body. All the liquid. Are you that? Is that what you are? No. Is that what we are? No, we're not that. The fire, the warmth in our body, and combustion, warmth, transformation. Are we that? Is that me? No, it's part of me, but it's not me. And not the wind. Think about the air, the movement, the prana, you can say, the movement element in the body, wind element, the lightness. Are we that? Again, no. Space, think about the empty spaces in our body. Are we that? No. And then consciousness. Sorry. Consciousness. So when are we a mind? That's definitely a better candidate than our body. But yeah, we're not our mind either. Because then we wouldn't say my mind, right? It wouldn't make sense for the mind to belong to itself. So are we our consciousness? Also, no. Also, if we were consciousness, we wouldn't, nobody would be able to see us or touch us. We wouldn't have any shape or color. So we're also not consciousness. Then are we all of them? The person is not all of them put together. No, because altogether they're just a collection of parts, and the person is not a collection of parts. We're not just a jumble of different parts, right? So then what is the person other than these? Well, other than these, totally separate from these, there is no person. So what is the person then? I mean, he doesn't give the answer here, but the person is that which is merely imputed upon the collection of parts, right? There's parts, our body, our mind, all the parts of our body and mind. What are we? We are that which is merely imputed upon, or labeled upon, that collection of parts. That's how we exist. Okay. And then he says, verse 81. So then, in the same way, the same analysis we can do then with regard to any of those parts. Just as a person is not real due to being a composite of the 6 constituents, or a composite of a lot of different things, so each of those constituents also is not real due to being a composite. So think about, just take like our body, for example. It's not real because, when we look for where is my actual body, right? We try to zoom in and find it. All we find is a lot of parts which are not our body. Our hands are not our body because our body has feet. Our hands don't have feet, for example. So we find, a lot of different parts, our hands, legs, ears, organs, cells, so forth. So all of those parts we can do the different parts that make up the different parts that make up us as a person. We can do the same analysis with regard to each of those parts. They're also made up of smaller parts, and they also exist independent upon being imputed upon their collection of parts, their basis of imputation. So there, I'll stop, maybe leaving you in complete confusion, but that's a good condition for you to ask questions. So what are your questions? Yeah, Dipti?
Yeah, a lot of everyone has been teaching us about how to meditate on emptiness from when we are beginners. Why does it become difficult and more difficult to kind of analyze emotions and the emptiness of certain emotions, and not physical entities like a table and a chair and things like that? When we have to analyze jealousy, for example, today you were speaking about that. Why does that become so difficult and than, let's say, the table and the basis and things like that?
Yeah, good question. I think it's because, emotions, they're instances of kind of consciousness, mind. And so they're much more subtle than a physical phenomena. You were comparing to like a table or chair. So it's much easier, like I always like to use my mug I have here today, my prop. But like, an object like this, it's a physical object. It's not going to disappear. It doesn't just slip out of our, if it slips out of my hand, it breaks, but it doesn't just like go away. If we try to analyze jealousy, it's much more difficult. We can't just like, pick it up and set it on the table, look at it. No, we have to first kind of remember, get clear about what do we mean by jealousy, then remember a time we were jealous, bring that to mind, and then look at it. And it's hard to hold it kind of in front of our attention and analyze it and look at it. We can, but it's not as easy. And then it's not so obvious maybe how it's made up of parts. With a physical object, it has like a north, south, east, west, sides, a top, a bottom. Obviously, it's made up of a lot of different, colors and, molecules, different parts. So it's quite easy to see that. But something like an emotion, like jealousy, of course, it's not as easy to see how it's made up of parts. Usually with consciousness, we say instances of consciousness are made up of parts in time. Physical objects are made up of parts in space, right? So physical objects have, different parts in space: a north side, south side, east side, west side, a near side, a far side, a top side, bottom side. Different spatially, they occupy space, so we can easily divide them up spatially, physical things. But consciousness, they have a duration through time. So, anytime we're jealous, it has some duration in time. We feel jealous for maybe just a few seconds, maybe a few hours, maybe a few years. So, but we lump that all together in our mind as like jealousy about that, maybe with regard to one object. So we can divide up in moments in time is one way. We can also divide up, to look at different parts of it, to analyze how it exists in dependence upon parts. We can divide up in time. Also divide up, it has different, we can see, if we think about a time we were jealous, if we really look closely, we can see how it kind of shifts, It's not just like a static, the emotion isn't static. Emotions aren't totally static, just unchanging. They change very slightly through time. I mean, that's the stuff of novelists and playwrights and stuff, to look in detail about, how emotions change according to, the light or a scent of something, or a memory that comes up. And it can help, to learn more about our emotional world, to read stuff like that, different poetry and novels, and listen to music. Anyway, does that help?
I have a connected question. It does help, but my connected question is about conventional reality. When we're talking about conventional reality, are we talking always about, I mean, every time people mention conventional reality, they talk about tangible objects around us, tangible things around us, like, the road, or maybe the layout of people. Will all of the mental factors also come under the conventional reality?
Yes. Yeah, all consciousness are conventional reality, conventional truths. Ultimate truth is only emptiness itself. Just the mere fact of, something being empty of inherent existence. That's its ultimate nature. That's ultimate truth. Everything else is conventional truth. Even emptiness has a conventional nature because it's a dependent arising, in addition to ultimate nature. Everything is ultimate nature, its emptiness of inherent existence, and a conventional nature, the fact that it's dependent arising. Okay. Another question?
So all phenomena that we see, sorry.
Let's give Madhav a chance.
So all phenomena that we see.
Hold on, Dipti. Your time is up. Madhav's turn.
Madhavji.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Venerable Legstok, I had a question regarding, imagination, right? Like when we're doing practice, tantric practice, we're imagining, right? We're imagining a certain type of deities and becoming that deity, and so on and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and also when we're talking about that aspect, also when we're talking about the Bardo states, right? They say it's when we're in these states, it's just our own consciousness that are creating this own mischief to ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Right. So how do we go through? How do we cut that? Like, how do we recognize, like, when we're sleeping, right? Obviously, before we go to sleep, we're this dream comes up, right? I mean, we're in this dream, the Bardo sleep, Bardo walking. So we're all in, it's a Bardo, correct? I mean, all of it's a Bardo.
Yes.
It's our own consciousness reflecting things out.
True.
Right. And we're grasping to these things, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So how my question is, how do we like recognize the emptiness? Like do we, is there like a, it's so hard, right? To grasp at this. Like even
yeah,
no,
but
do you
even
have to,
thinking that becomes an obstacle, no? If we think
yeah,
it's so hard, it's so
yeah,
hard, that becomes an obstacle too.
correct. This is what I'm trying to get to. Like, how do we know when do we, I mean, we can all read the books and all these things, but at the end of the day, it's experiential, right? To experience emptiness.
Yeah. It's true. We have to
That's
have an
my
experience.
question there. How do we know? Like,
You brought together a lot of things in your question. I see.
A lot of thought.
Yeah, good. It's good to see it's good you're thinking. And you're thinking, I mean, along the right lines. You've got, you've got all the right pieces there and almost fit together. Let me start, try to go back a little bit to what you were saying at the beginning. Oh yeah, in Tantra, we're imagining things. That's true. But we're imagining, you remember we're imagining things after dissolving everything into emptiness, right? So that's very important. That's always at the beginning of any practice, is dissolve everything into emptiness. It's ultimate nature, right? And then out of that, then everything is dissolved into emptiness, and we have a mind realizing the emptiness of everything, realizing everything's lack of an inherent existence. So then then we imagine that mind transforming into all kinds of stuff, the mandalas and the deities and a pure land and all that. So why we do that is because that's what we want to actually do, right? That's what we want to become. So then go back to the other parts of your question. So then, okay, so they're related to the bardo. Yeah, like you were saying, a bardo, what is a bardo? So that's very helpful to think about in relation to the Tantra part, is because what is bardo? It means, it happens after death, right? I mean, there's one way to talk about four bardos. They do more so in not so much in the Gelugpa, but in the like Kagyu Nyingma tradition. But it's a helpful way to think about. But okay, so usually bardo we talk about is the period between when we die and when we take rebirth, right? And during that period, we have a body. It's kind of like a dream body. It's just an ephemeral. It's a mental body, right? We have it's a very subtle kind of body, and what we experience is just a projection of our karma. But that's not so different from now, because now what we experience is also a projection of our karma. I mean, another way related. Well, we'll come. Okay, maybe I'll try not to jump ahead, and try not to go on for too long. But so what is death, right? So bardo is the time from death to rebirth. But then what is death? Death is when our stream of consciousness separates from this body, right? So as a person, we say we die, but what that means is it's not that we cease to exist as a person. We cease to exist as a person identified with this body in this life, right? This body is like a guest house, and we strongly identify as, I'm the person who stays in this guest house. But then all of a sudden, we get kicked out of this guest house. And we realize, actually, I'm not just a person who is in that guest house. I'm this person who exists without that, outside of that guest house, even though it might feel very lonely and strange at first if we haven't prepared for that eventuality. So when we die, it doesn't mean we actually cease to exist. It's not that we come to an end as a person. It just means our existence as we were, in this human body with this name and this gender and this race and this, story about ourselves, all that comes to an end. Right? But our mind and our person, the essential, what we are as a mind and a person, that goes on. So that includes all of our imprints, all of our karma, all of our habituation, all of our mental tendencies, all that stuff is carried along. So then in the bardo, what kind of, all of a sudden we don't have this existence that's tied to this body and this identity anymore. So what kind of body and identity do we have? It's according to what's projected by the imprints and the forces in our mind. It projects a whole new kind of identity and environment and reality. And so it's just, so then it come back to your dream part. Yeah, so it is like a dream. It's like when we fall asleep, we're somewhat separated from our waking way of thinking. And then when we give rise to a dream, it's different forces in our mind produce an entire environment and an identity. And then we experience that as real if we don't know we're dreaming, right? So usually the kind of identity we have in a dream, it's pretty similar. I don't know, maybe for you all not. For me, it's usually quite similar to the kind of identity I have in my waking life. But could be very different because it's not fixed. But imagine when we die. I mean, it's a lot stronger than going to sleep, right? It's the karma to be, in a way we could say, like when we fall asleep and have a dream, that dream is still largely shaped by the kind of karma we're experiencing now as a human. When we die, the karma to experience this life as a human has come to an end. Different karma is ripening. So it's much stronger like dream. And you don't wake up from it back into what you were before. So I mean, it's helpful to think like there's this, well, now I'm going on too long. But what's the difference between waking life and dream? If your dream, imagine you went to sleep and had a dream, and that dream lasted like a whole year. You didn't wake up for a whole year, and you had just a continuous dream for a whole year. That would seem like your waking life, right? You'd probably forget about your whole waking life. And you'd feel like your waking life was actually a dream, and this is reality now. This actual, this whole year-long dream, that's actually the reality. And that thing I had before was just a dream. What's the difference? I think the difference between a dream and waking life is just a dream. It's like we just experience for a short time, and then it's over. And then in relation to our waking life, it seems very ephemeral, right? But actually, this life that we're in, it's not. It only lasts for 100 years, and then it's over. And then, if we could look back on it, 1,000 years, if we could look back on a life we had 1,000 years ago, it would seem like, yeah, it's not that different from a dream. It was a dream that lasted 100 years instead of just, 1 minute. But in terms of it being something that's projected by forces in our mind, it's the same. But then another difference with waking life, and so here, the last point I'll make is that we share our reality with others. Our dream is it's exclusively our reality, right? But in a waking life, we share this reality with others around us. It's not an exclusive projection of our own life. Okay, Anne?
I missed a lot of your talk. My apologies. But with Madhav, your question, it kind of completely relates to some of the things I've been thinking about, and I was going to ask as well, and stuff that Mary Ellen and I talked about like a year ago, actually. Mm-hmm. With regard to I think the dreams and waking life, it seems like the difference is if there's a valid basis or not. In waking life, there are tables that are kind of hard. But when you're dreaming, and you realize you're dreaming, if you hit the table, it'll feel hard, but it's a dream. I mean, it's mind. And about distinguishing between waking life and dream life, I was thinking about that because Mary Ellen, we were talking about that like a year ago of like, if it seems, and I'm wondering about this, Venerable, like, because of discovering Buddhism and actually the how to meditate class, there were questions about interest. And I thought times where there's more lucidity in dreaming have been times where I'm guarding my mind quite a lot. And then I never had the words for it. But due to our self-assessment exam and really thinking about it, it seems like guarding your mind is about introspection and mindfulness. Would that be correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Because then I think Mandav, to your, you were thinking like, how do we become more aware? And it seems like similar to what's said in is it the 3 higher trainings where it's like ethics and concentration and wisdom? The key is introspection and mindfulness in every moment. Because then we can become more aware of appearances being illusory in our sleep as well as during the daytime, kind of, or the critical role of the mind creating our experiences, I guess, maybe.
Mhm.
But and my question, Venerable, was, about like in the DB class, there came at the end of our last class, there was a really good question someone posed about like, is karma a slightly hidden phenomena or a super duper hidden phenomena? And it segued into a conversation about valid cognition.
What's your question, Anne? Can you succinctly ask?
I can, sure. So like, if we are analyzing, like, in order to have a realization and inferential valid realization, it's through reasoning, right?
Yes.
And that sounds like it's a lot of reasoning through a conscious mind and conceptual mind.
Mhm.
But the things that seem really impactful with examining emptiness is where there is no valid basis, like in a dream.
There's a valid basis in a dream. I mean, a dream exists. Everything that exists has a valid basis. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. Everything's imputed upon its basis of imputation. And yeah, I mean, it's just because something is conceptual doesn't mean it can't impact your mind. If you think about it deeply affects you, even if it's conceptual.
Okie dokie. Thanks.
Sure. Think about it anyway. We can discuss more later. Okay, we just have a few minutes left. There's one last short question can answer, otherwise we can dedicate and conclude. Okay, looks like not. So let's first rejoice in whatever merit we've created and the merit created by others. So rejoice in whatever merit you yourself have created and the others in the session have created together, and then merit created by all of the sentient beings, and then all enlightened beings. So all this merit gathered together, we dedicate, then especially may we and all sentient beings deepen our understanding of interdependent arising and emptiness, and have a more and more deeper sense of our interconnectedness also with other sentient beings and with the environment, the world at large. in order to deepen our sense of caring and kindness and concern for others. So in short, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering, especially the ignorance, which is the root cause of suffering. And may all sentient beings have wisdom, which is the antidote to that, and which is a source of every form of well-being and happiness, up to full enlightenment. And may the Guru's lives be long and stable, and may the Buddha Dharma flourish, especially Choe Khor Sum Ling, the host of tonight's session. Okay, back to you, Dipti. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Genla. And thank you all. And Aman will get in touch with you all with regards to the next session. So please keep watching. Thank you.
Oh yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Genla.
Thank you. Send you, Venerable.
Okay,
Thank
ciao.
you, Venerable. Thank you, Dipti.
Thank you. Thank you. Season's greetings to you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Venerable.
Okay, Genla. See you soon.
See you, Dipti. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Dilshad.
How are you?
Bye. You're in Bangalore? So 29th, we are having puja.
Evening time.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.